From San Antonio, Texas, home of the Alamo, the Riverwalk, and the World Heritage San Antonio Missions, this is the Exit Planning Coach podcast with John F. Dini. Designed to help advisors who work with business owners, John talks with top professionals in the exit planning field about best practices, marketing tips, and how to be more effective when working with owners. Now, here's John F. Dini.
Welcome back to the Exit Planning Coach podcast. My guest today is Joe Markovitch from Vancouver, BC. You know, Joe. I was at a Spurs game here in San Antonio on Friday night, and a good friend came in with a guest who was his sister, and she was from BC.
Maybe I know her. What's her name? I'm joking.
Kristen. Does that help?
I got funny story about that. I was on a ski lift one time with this guy from Hong Kong. And I'm kind of joking with him, where are you from? He says, oh, I'm from Hong Kong. You know, I said, oh, really? Hong Kong? I said, I have a cousin there who's a chiropractor. He says, oh, what's his name? And I'm like, so I give him his name. He said, that's my chiropractor.
Wow. It must be a BC thing. Joe is a senior business advisor. He's a BEI certified exit planner, and he's the co-founder of Solly's Bakery. I did not know you were in the bagel business.
I was for 16 or 17 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have good, authentic bagels?
Well, it's funny you should ask. There's arguments about what's authentic. We could have a discussion just about bagels, I think. But what we did is we kind of created a West Coast bagel, which was kind of a hybrid between like a New York style bagel, puffy, fluffy thing, and a Montreal style. Montreal has got their own style of bagels.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They're famous. They wood oven, the whole thing. So we called it a West Coast bagel.
Oh, okay. So Joe has 30 years of small business experience or small and mid-market experience. And he has also been a business instructor at Vancouver Community College for over 10 years. He's a senior advisor at Wardell International, and looking forward to talking to him. Joe and I have talked many times, and this is our first time on the podcast. Welcome, Joe.
Yeah. Well, welcome. Thank you for having me.
Let me ask you the first question that we always open up with. What made you decide to work with business owners on exit planning?
Well, my story is that, as you mentioned, I was working with Wardell as a business advisor. By the way, I've left Wardell now because my exit practice is getting busier, and I just want to focus entirely on that part of it.
Good.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I realized that, as a business advisor, our focuses on helping owners structure and systemize so that they could scale their business. And it was really, our plan and our purpose. But I realized that there was something kind of missing. There was a gap in the services that we provided. And that was that there's kind of no end game, there's like, where are we trying to get to, and how will we know when we're there? So I came across a broker who used to work at Wardell, and he moved on to become a M&A advisor at another company and all that stuff. And he was telling me, oh yeah, we get a lot of guys who are coming in here. They want to sell their business. They're nowhere near prepared, and we got to turn them away or give them a valuation that just makes them angry. So I thought, well, that's an interesting gap kind of fill. I wonder who's kind of looking after getting these owners prepared for that transition, and realized that I did some research and realized, there's a couple of associations in the U.S. There's nothing in Canada. There was nothing in Canada. Like when I started, this is almost maybe 3 years, almost not 2.5 years ago, that I started. And when I started researching, I found these two organizations that were kind of prominent there, and I realized, oh wow, this is exactly what I want to be doing. And that's how I got started. Plus, right. I got to add to that the other motivation was I had my own personal exit experience from Solly's, and it did not go smoothly, to put it mildly.
Oh, we all like horror stories. What happened?
Okay.
Why?
I don't know if we have enough time. No, well, I'll cut it short. It's an interesting story. It's an interesting story. So my wife and I, who's now my ex-wife, started this bakery in 1994. We started from scratch. I had no baking experience. I was in marketing and advertising. That was and she was a landscape designer. So we were perfectly aligned for the
qualified.
business. Perfectly qualified. She took a bakery. Anyway, we started this business on the corner of Main Street in Vancouver, which has become a kind of a popular street here. And from the day one, it was a hit. It was like huge, like people were lined up at the door even before we opened for the first day. At 11 o'clock in the morning, we're a bakery. We had no food left to sell that day.
Wow.
And it was almost catching up all the time. We opened other locations, we grew, we got a central commissary, all this stuff. As a result of that growth in the business, our relationship faltered. I didn't know if I was at home, at work, everything. We had kids. It was pretty stressful. And we realized we could no longer be together. And so we decided, well, one of us is going to carry on with the business. The problem was we had no agreement like we had, other than we're married. We had no buy-sell. We had no, like, what possibly could happen. We're married. So we ended up through going to a mediator and doing all this thing, couldn't come to an agreement. Finally had to give it to the court, and the court had to make a decision. And they did what courts do, is kind of, they give you, okay, put a number in an envelope or offer an envelope, we'll pick the best number, and that's who gets the business. And did that. He came back half an hour later, said, they're looking pretty close. Why don't you come back in 2 hours and give us your final number. So we're anxious about putting a number. How should we go higher? Should we go? Anyway, it was stressful. Obviously, we go back to the court and submit the offers. And he comes out of about 10 minutes. He said, "Look through both offers. They look about the same, except there's one difference. Her offer did not have a non-compete. Ours did. So because her offer lacked that, he assessed that as being more valuable than the incremental difference that we made." And it was like, okay, she's got the business. So between that first submission, the second one, her lawyer advised her to pull out that instead of adding more money, and she ended up with the business. Having said that, I'm happy where I am here today. The business still continues after 29 years, or almost 30 years probably in business, and is well known in the city. But it was not the ending, or not the transition I ever thought would be good for us. Yeah, so that's kind of that's that story, and I learned from that. And guess what? I learned that it's not uncommon. My experience is not uncommon for many business owners who failed to transition in the way they wanted to,
or failed to document at the outset.
Totally.
Although with a spouse, I can understand it, certainly.
Yeah. Well, you learn.
I'll have to go in. I've only been married 48 years. I wonder if Leila wants to sign.
Yeah, do you have that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Tell me about your typical first meeting with a client. How do you start out with a client?
Well, okay, so I subscribe to ExitMap, and so one of the first things I like to do is do an assessment. Have them do this assessment. I think it's really a natural step, and it just kind of gets us talking, about something that's relevant to the owner, the readiness of their business. And so that's my general approach. If people aren't ready to take that step and do the assessment, then, have a conversation. And I just like to kind of hear their story. I was sharing with a client, recent client, a couple of weeks back, and he was telling his story about his business, and he started tearing up. And when I said to him, I said, that's a great story. That's a great story. And he started tearing up. And I realized, wow, this is how emotional this is for business owners, is that they have that, their story says so much about, who they are and what's important to them.
when you're converting a prospect into a client, you go out and meet them, you're talking to them about their business, you're trying to understand them better. What we all know that people are reluctant to discuss exit planning. It's a scary thing to most owners. What tips do you have? What do you do to get them to understand that it's time to start the planning?
I have another new client who's told me, do not say exit. I want you to call it legacy planning. Do never say exit again through this process. I'm creating a legacy. So yeah, sometimes it's just the language I think that you use, and it's about the path that you're helping them take, and it's really just kind of giving them a sense of this is something that obviously needs to be done. I think there are very few owners that would say it doesn't help to plan, for this, and so. If you can make that process seem doable, like I like to kind of, after my first engagement, I like to get them to do the ExitMap Express, because it looks like a 3 or 4 month commitment. They're not looking at this big elephant in the room that they've got to devour. Look at this, and I tell them in 90, whatever, 120 days, you're going to get a documented binder thing that we're going to be able to move and implement on, and that's been successul. That approach has been successful.
I get your marketing stuff. I think it's very slick. It's very nice.
Okay.
How many ways do you go out there for new business? How do you market to find prospects?
As I mentioned to you at the beginning, I started my career off in advertising. Marketing. That's my so I get excited about marketing, and I realized that one of the things about this practice is it's a very targeted audience you're trying to speak to.
Sure.
Two specific groups: owners who are likely to be exiting their business in the next 5-10 years, and seasoned advisors that have that long-term relationship with them. So those are the two groups that I'm marketing to, and I create content and I post it regularly. I've done more video content because I've been told I look great on TV, so I formed a roundtable of business advisors, from my BEI experience, and we've been developing a regular rapport. We've done some panel discussions. So we've created and held a panel discussion. We're going to do another one. That's been really good. Speaking to owners groups, and it is, to me, is like, the golden opportunity, because you've got a dozen or so owners in the room. And I had one that I did with a group called McKay. I don't know if they have McKay in the US, but anyway, so I'm speaking to this group of about 15 or more owners, 15, 16 owners. At the end of my presentation, 2 of them came up and gave me their business card. And another one said, they wanted to follow up and have coffee. So, and one of those 3 has turned into a client. And the other one is a great referral source for the future. Yeah. I also did something on LinkedIn too, which I have a vision for that. And that is basically to create a group on LinkedIn of diverse advisors that within this little kind of local ecosystem, and get all and then exchange and refer within that ecosystem on LinkedIn, because they're already there,
Sure.
and if we can get them to engage and promote events, that's been my strategy, and so far, it's created some results. I'm not full up. I've got room in my calendar.
Yeah.
But that's what I've been doing. Yeah, I think those are all the things that I think we do. Of course, it's great to meet with people. I always try and follow up, have a coffee. It's great to, especially we're local here. That makes a difference. You have a chat with them and then follow up with a coffee. Nothing like, having a one-on-one conversation.
Yeah. No, I like to meet with people too. And always do. I mean, I remember a case many years ago when my partner and I were so jammed up with consulting work, we just couldn't take another client. And this is when we were in healthcare, and he had a hospital called up and said, we want to bring you out here to do what we did at the time, the network development. And I said, I'm sorry, and they said, no, we really, really want you. You're the guys. We have to have you. And I said, I don't think there's enough money to make us take on another client right now. I was wrong. There was.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Turn away the
Okay.
business and the price goes up. That's good.
Yeah, right. Let's take a break here so we can pay for the podcast. We'll only be gone for a minute, and then we'll come back and continue with Joe Markovitch. Hello, John F. Dini here, and I'm very excited to announce the publication of the Exit Planning Coach Handbook. Inspiration for the handbook comes from my 25 years of working as a coach to business owners, with 12 of those years dedicated to helping them plan their business transitions. It is a guide for advisors that explains why working with business owners is so dramatically different from working with other executives. It provides insights on how to approach planning conversations with owners more effectively. Plus, it takes you through the steps that will help you develop your relationship as their most trusted advisor. I wrote this book for advisors who want their clients to move on to a second act that's even more rewarding than their first. If you read any of my previous books, you know I don't lecture. It's a conversation between two professionals. If you work with business owners, I strongly encourage you to read the Exit Planning Coach Handbook. I think it will quickly become a go-to in your reference library. It is currently available on Amazon in the Kindle store, in paperback, and as an audiobook. Okay, welcome back to the Exit Planning Coach podcast. I'm here with Joe Markovitch, a business exit and succession advisor from Joco Business Coaching in Vancouver, BC. Canada. And I love your address, 1450 Penny Farthing Drive.
Okay.
Wow, that's a really
I don't really live there, but I put that address in.
Well,
sounds good.
It's a great address. It really is. Give us the rest of your contact information, Joe, in case somebody wants to get a hold of you.
Well, my email is joe@joco.ca.
And Joco is JOECO.
Yeah. And that's it. And our website is joco.ca. Get a hold of me through either of those sources quite easily.
Before, during, after a planning engagement, probably all three, actually. What's your ideal client relationship?
Well, okay. I think, just ideal client relationship is a relationship of trust, open, honest communication, just understanding that that I'm here to help, and I'm here to help guide, coach the owner through this process. Ideally, the owner values experience and values a process and is willing to kind of cooperate and move forward in the process in the manner that they've defined and in the timeline that they've set. It's a serious business, but I like to have fun and I like to make it an enjoyable experience. So in any way that I can kind of make the process lighter, bring some humor to things, share some stories. I think that's good because it's not easy for a lot of owners to even start, let alone follow through on committing to do the process. So I think they need encouragement and someone to check up on them and know that they're accountable to somebody who's watching and holding them to what they've agreed to do. So that's probably the things that come to my mind.
You mentioned that you have a peer group of advisors that you're getting some business out of and that you meet a lot of people for coffee. What do you think is your best referral source?
Well, let me say this as first of all, I'm not getting business from the advisors in the BEAR group, you might call them BEAR group, Business Exit Advisors Roundtable. I'm actually giving them business. I'm actually giving them. It happened last week again, where I have a client who needs estate planning work, and so they've engaged. I've recommended the person, and a couple of people they engaged with her, and she happens to be on the group. So that's happening. I think there needs to. Somebody told me who's been around this business for a long time, it wasn't you, but here locally, said that, these are groups, they had it, there wasn't that productive for them in terms of referrals. But I think for me, I think you just, if you give, start by giving, without expectation, I think it'll come back to you.
I agree entirely. I've shied away from those groups where you walk in and they say, okay, how much business have you given? How much business have you gotten? They
Right.
start every meeting like that. I mean, it's good to keep your eye on the ball, but that's not really why I want to be there. You're fairly new to exit planning. You've been doing it for a couple of years.
Yeah.
What would, and lots of people are coming into exit planning now. We see lots of advisors picking up exit planning as another skill set or as a differentiation. What would be your advice to somebody that's exit planning for the first time? Even upstream from that, considering getting into exit planning?
Yeah. Well, the thing that occurred to me as someone who came out of the business advisory practice is I didn't have a roster of renewals, that I could already connect with. I didn't have a subscription service like an insurance guy or vast. So I was really starting in many ways. I had a limited number of owner clients I'd worked with, and fewer of them were interested in even talking about exiting. So I had to really start from scratch. So I think if you're adding it on to what you already do, it does make it easier. If you're starting from from scratch, really, it makes it a little bit difficult. And I had to work pretty hard to kind of build my brand, if you will, in this market, to get known, to meet different people, to talk about different things that I talked about, and I would say that was the biggest challenge for me. But also having, as someone who's starting and never done this before, having the passion and really doing it for the right reason, not because you're just gonna, hey, this is a hot business now, we could tag that on, but really, for me, just have a commitment to it from the, to the purpose behind it, because I think it's really important for me, who's kind of looking as this is my kind of exit plan, if you will. I've transitioned into this business because I want to do something that is motivating, gets me up every morning and excited about the day, and really see the value in terms of helping people through this process. So that helps, because it helps you kind of stay motivated to work at this. And it's taken me, as you said, like a couple of years to really start to build my practice and get a certification and do everything I needed to do. The other thing I would add to that is I'm grateful for the mentors I've had, which I would say, you being one of them, have been very, very gracious and generous in sharing your time and helping me to kind of, gain the wisdom of your experience, which was help. Now you're going to get a bunch of guys that are going to be calling you, wanting you to mentor. So try and get, a mentor or two. I think that's really good. And the other thing I've learned is getting organized. Like for me, I just really, once I understood what the practice was about, I realized, I got to have a place to store this. It's secure. I got to have this kind of thing. I got to have this. I got to have a CRM. I got to have all these tools together. I got to be able to manage and coordinate and communicate, and all these things that have been learning experience in the first year or more were just something. But now, I'm starting to gain my wings and feeling like I'm ready to fly a little bit.
Well, you say you want something that gets you excited every day. Something tells me you get up excited no matter what, Joe.
Well, you know what, I do think it's important because I look at this practice holistically, right? It's not just about it's kind of going to get the check at the end of the run here, and you're going to be happy and go off to play golf. No, I realize that there's much more involved in terms of the life after business, if you will. That second half book that I read, Bufford, many things that you've said as well are just around identifying that personal passion, and if you can get the owner excited about that, and can't wait to kind of get to that point where he's going to be really doing something new and exciting, and gets him up every morning like this has been for me, I think it's going to make the path a lot smoother.
Yeah. Well, as we say frequently, and I believe I say in the book, the latest book too, entrepreneurs move towards things. They don't just move away from things. They're not good at moving away from things.
Right.
They've spent 20, 30, sometimes 40 years having targets, having goals, having metrics, and they want to move towards
Towards
something. And
something.
that's what I
Yeah.
feel is so important.
Yeah.
And what we emphasize so much in working with them.
Totally. It can sabotage the whole process, really.
I remember being in a museum in Vienna, and they had a sergeant's halberd there. I wrote a story about this once, an article about this once. And a halberd, is the big long pole with the spear thing and the axe thing on the end of it. And,
what do they use that for?
Well, I was surprised because the dating on it was long after muskets. And I said,
Okay.
why would a sergeant be carrying this medieval weapon when everybody else had firearms? That would seem to be, bringing a knife to a gunfight, right? That would not be a good
ceremonial.
idea.
Could be ceremonial.
No. The docent in the museum overheard me, and he started laughing, and he said, "No, sir, you do not understand. In those days, the sergeant walks behind the men. You can't do that with entrepreneurs. You can't push them into exit planning."
Fair enough. Yeah, that's a good analogy for sure. Yeah.
All right, Joe. It's been great talking to you. I hope
Hey.
you come back. We're going to have some panels and stuff coming up in probably after the first year of kind of rotating through, meeting a lot of people and talking about exit planning. We're going to start talking about more specific stuff. I'd love to get you back to talk about some of that.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it.
All right. Well, it was a pleasure. Thanks a lot, Joe.